Hi everyone, it's Elizabeth from Elpis Astrology at elpisastrology.com. Thanks for joining me today. So today I am going to do the whole of March from the standpoint of an astrological forecast. And individually, I will be doing each of your sun signs and or ascendants. So I will put a timestamp in for each of the ascendants so you can go directly to what is happening with regards to you specifically. So when we look at March 2022, we can really say that there's going to be some big changes in March for sure. So that if things have been stuck for you and not moving forward, this is the month where you're actually going to be able to see that the changes are starting to happen, and they're probably going to happen pretty rapidly too. So we start off on the 2nd of March 2022 with our new moon in Pisces, and it'll be at 12 degrees Pisces, 7 minutes, at 9:34 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We will also have Mars in Capricorn going over Venus to connect with Pluto in Capricorn. So essentially having a Mars-Venus-Pluto conjunction. This is extremely powerful. Now when we have Mars and Venus together, typically we're talking about the celestial lovers. But here I think we're talking about males and females that are in traditional institutions working to transform things. Of course, the transformation comes through Pluto. So I would say this is really intense behind the scenes efforts by those people in power in our institutions, really putting great change into place. And I would expect to actually see that in the real world. That's not just going to be, we hope it's happening type of thing, and then we hear about it later. We're actually going to hear and see announcements about things with regards to change. So we then have on the 3rd of March, this whole Venus specifically does conjunct Pluto on her own. So even though Mars is still hovering around, we now have the diplomatic Venus conjuncting with the transformation. And I thought this was more with regards to peace or peaceful type activities, diplomatic type of activities, but probably through a woman. So we may have a woman rising here that brings great diplomacy to the world, and of course specifically to other places in the world that are potentially big hotspots right now. On the 5th of March, we have the Sun conjuncting Jupiter in Pisces at 14 degrees of Pisces. Now on the 19th of March, Mercury will come up to this point too. And I think what this is going to be all about is news literally about our waters, our ocean. And I think a lot more is going to come out with this whole Jupiter in Pisces. We literally have more concern with our waters. We're going to have more things like flooding. So certainly in March, you can look out for things like that. I would, if individually you've got this prominent in your chart, literally be looking for things regarding water in your home. If there's anything that is dripping or potentially could have some kind of problems with water, I would get it resolved. This is a pretty big effect here. On the 7th of March, we have an interesting transit that's happening. And I thought this was sort of a turning point for March, even though it's just the 7th of March. We have Venus still conjuncting Mars, but it's now at 0 degrees of Aquarius. So now Venus and Mars take on a completely different hue with regards to what they mean. And I'll get to that in a second, but the important point is that this transit actually conjuncts the same degree point, 0 degrees and some minutes, Aquarius, that we had in December 2020. Where we had a whole new 20-year cycle happen or start with both Jupiter and Saturn. And this is of significance too. So this really gives, from my standpoint, it gives a buy-in. So even though the actual transit, the 20-year cycle started in December 2020, with this conjunction of Venus and Mars at the same degree point, it really now says that literally men and women joining together in humanitarian needs, humanitarian type of action, There's going to be a lot more intellectual type things going on, and I would not be surprised if we have some major scientific, not just a discovery, but scientific discoveries sort of started around the 7th of March, and I would say continuing the whole way through March as well. But this is tied into the cycle of the 20 years, so we're going to see lots of new things happening, certainly in the next 20 years with regards to science and literally outer space. Now, Pluto will reach this point on the 1st of March, 2023. And of course, then that's that slow-moving transformational energy where it more incorporates the world in what's going on. So we really have another year almost from now with regards to some real visuals of how our world has changed scientifically, intellectually, from a humanitarian standpoint, that sort of thing. So this is a process over the next year as Pluto makes his way up to that same point as well, right? So when we break down this whole Venus-Mars at 0 degrees of Aquarius, let's look at Mars first. So Mars in Aquarius is very dynamic. It can be rebellious and nervously overcharged. Mars, instead of making the action himself, in Aquarius sparks that action. And that's a little different with regards to the action Mars is going to exert as a result of this conjunction of Mars and Venus at 0 degrees of Aquarius. So he sparks that action in others. So you can expect early March and all the way through March, probably lots of rising up, literally, of the people. This is grassroots type thing. These are also intellectuals. You know, if you think back to any newsreels that you saw, say from the 50s and 60s, I'm always amazed when you actually get to witness broadcasters and journalists speaking what they think is the truth, as opposed to having it diluted down and, you know, transformed through the media machine. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that too, where we're going to have on-the-spot type things where people are going to start speaking the truth, and it's going to get on the airwaves to really help us understand what's going on in this world. But certainly we're going to have literally the people rising and starting to do marches. I don't necessarily see big, like, out-of-hand protests here, but I do see the people rising, and it's going to be literally everywhere in the world to transform our society, the way we do things, the way things are meted out, where some people get things other people don't. There's going to be a real push for equality amongst all of us. So that's Mars. When we look at Venus in Aquarius, Venus idealizes love, but she brings a mental energy along with diplomatic relations, but specifically for humanitarian needs. She's certainly unconventional in Aquarius, and she seeks freedom from the fetters of relationships. And I would say probably around this time, we're going to be seeing literally breakups of relationships too, where people are just going to say, I need my freedom. And there's going to be a lot of that happening here too. But certainly when we look at the fact that really Venus and Mars in conjunction really stayed more in Capricorn before it then went into Aquarius, I really saw this more of Venus distributing the gains, right? The gains that she got in Capricorn. Capricorn's all about rising to the top, gaining power and control, but it's also gaining the goods, the money, right? That's kind of what Venus represents. So she's taking the gains that was made and then distributing that for the next few months as she's sparking off this whole conjunction with Mars and Aquarius and activating that whole 20-year cycle of Jupiter and Saturn. So look for that as well. In fact, perhaps we'll see even announcements where literally money is going to be distributed for humanitarian needs, and not necessarily just because there was some big earthquake or something. There's just going to be more distribution of the money that's out there to others that are in need. All right, So we've got the full moon that's going to be in Virgo on the 18th of March at 12:17 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time at 27 degrees of Virgo, 40 minutes. We're going to have Venus is going to be on her way to conjunct Saturn at this time, so bringing a really important diplomatic message to perhaps put something in writing in the law, to really form some kind of permanent thing with regards to diplomacy. That's what I feel here. And then, of course, Venus will be squaring Uranus, so this could be some upsetting, surprising news over the airways. That's where I saw this, because of course Uranus can represent the airwaves literally. But we do have Venus sextiling Chiron, and certainly in Virgo, with the whole Virgo full moon, Virgo is all about health as well as service to others. So it seems to me that what may happen during this full moon is that we collect all the right information and facts and apply it to this whole health situation that we have that gives us more opportunities to have better health. And so I think this full moon on the 18th of March will mark some kind of turning point with regards to the whole viruses, and give us some really good news with regarding how we're going to get through this. We may, however, with the square, still have some other variant come in to cause continued problems in this area. So on the 21st of March, we have, certainly from an astrological standpoint, we have the beginning of the new year in astrology. I'm specifically talking about Western astrology, of course. And this is when the sun ingresses in at 0 degrees of Aries. So here we have the start of the astrological new year for Western astrologers. Happy New Year, everybody. But it also marks for you, Aries, a time of new beginnings for you as well. Now, what's interesting is this whole effect of whatever turns up in this chart at this time, of course, is going to cover the whole time period for 3 months with regards to influence. So we look at the moon, and the moon is at 29 degrees of Libra, 53 minutes, squaring Pluto. So we can expect that there's going to be some intense, so when we have a 29 degree point anywhere in a chart, we know that there's culminating energies and it tends to become fairly intense. So I would suggest that not only around the 21st of March, but for the next 3 months, we're also going to have an intensification with regards to some kind of diplomacy going on. Libra represents that. It can be the law, so we may actually have the law being laid down as well. And certainly squaring Pluto, there's going to be some kind of resistance with regards to the old guard, right? That's Pluto, that's the people in power. What else could this be? I really got the feeling of laws somehow, that laws, and maybe this is going to go back to, laws being enacted more locally, municipalities doing it, or communities doing it more, as opposed to more federal or state laws, and that there's resistance to those in power, i.e. those in the state and those in the federal government, resisting those. That, I think, intuitively is what this is about. So we may see a lot more big pushes in that area. And again, this is, people seeking peace and harmony and just wanting the best for everybody is what it boils down to. It certainly asks for peace and give peace a chance. So from a mundane standpoint, perhaps that will also be in effect here too. Maybe even the Ukraine under the microscope with regards to peaceful negotiations. We do have Mercury conjuncting Jupiter too, and this gives a lovely energy with regards to, and of course this is going to be in Pisces. So Pisces always seeks out compassion, really tries to hone into how are you feeling, and has this empathetic sort of spiritual sort of hue to your conversations. So I would say that's a nice thing to go along with the intensity that's going to be with regards to the resistance of those in power. But we also have Venus, and it's a wide square, but Venus will be squaring Uranus at this time too. So again, this is that resistance to change, right? And again, I think there's going to be maybe some uprising of women to really try to enact change here. I haven't seen that specifically. I'm not saying women aren't working behind the scenes, but this may bring something more to the forefront where we see women taking more of a role with regards to the change that we need to make in our world. And we'll actually see faces. It's not just going to be some words written about them. All right, so we end the month with a new moon in Aries. So happy new year to you, Aries. It is on the 31st of March at 11:25 p.m. And of course, this is Pacific Daylight Time. Elsewhere, it will be on April Fool's Day, the 1st of April. So at this new moon in Aries, we have the moon at 11 degrees of Aries, 31 minutes. And nicely, this sun and moon, because at every new moon we have the moon and the sun together, will conjunct Chiron. And I thought it was very appropriate that we sort of end March, and in many respects we're kind of ending a season in some ways with this conjuncting Chiron. And this just says, because of course Aries is the start of the zodiac, this is just a whole new start with regards to us healing. So I guess we can look towards the end of March with regards to some real line in the sand that we can say, oh, thank goodness, we're actually going to have better health. And certainly if you've got this anywhere in your chart and you've been suffering from ill health of any sort, this could be a whole new start for you. So we're looking at between 10 and 12 degrees of Aries, say your sun is there or your ascendant or a conglomeration of planets. The other thing we have is Neptune will be sextiling the north nodes of the moon in Taurus. Also really beautiful energy. It's difficult energy to capture unless you're vibrating to a very high level. So Neptune is really speaking to great compassion. It's agape love. It's like, communicating with everybody on the same level and not having any preconceived ideas with whoever you're speaking to. So it's a pretty high level of consciousness we're talking about, but if you're certainly open to it, this can certainly change. The more people that enter into that type of consciousness, however long you can stay in there, this is going to bring, for all of us globally, this north nodes of destiny to a much higher level with regards to compassion. Compassion for all, but especially compassion for ourselves, right? Now Saturn will be squaring Neptune sextiles, but Saturn will be squaring this. So Saturn goes back to the traditional, right? So it goes back to the more 3D type things with regards to where should we be going next as part of mankind. So again, I'm talking about more mundane type aspects. And so this is those in charge, those who've been telling us what to do, saying that we must continue doing it this way, the traditional ways. Whereas the Neptune sextile is saying, look, I'm trying to give you some opportunities here to really do things a lot better. It's not going to be more difficult to do it. It just means that more people will benefit. And this may also be tied into, with regards to our earth, literally, right? Our farming practices, and by extension, anything to do with our water as well, where we're going to be given some opportunities to clean things up. And I think we must take them. But we're going to have some resistance from those that are kind of ruling the traditional ways we've been doing things. All right. Next, I'm going to be covering each of the sun signs and ascendants. My preference is for you to actually read for your ascendant if you can only read or listen to one. This is going to give you the area of your life that's going to be affected by the new moons and the full moons and then any other aspects that are happening in March. Right, so before I go on to go into your individual signs or ascendants, this is my first attempt at doing monthly videos by sign and posting them by sign so they can be more specific and individual to each of you. I'd be interested to hear your comments if you have any, and certainly if you feel that you like this format, I'd like to hear that too. Always open to suggestions, and I hope this is going to be of benefit to everybody. I've really enjoyed it. It's been a lot of preparation, but it's been a lot of fun too, and I plan to continue this and maybe even offer new things to my subscribers and viewers. Thanks for watching and have a wonderful March. All right, so we've got Capricorn. Capricorn, this new moon's a good moon for you in Pisces because it sextiles, gives opportunities to you. And it's mainly affecting you in your third house. And the third house really is the house of communications. So I would say that some kind of favorable communications are going to be coming in because we, of course, as I spoke about in my introduction, we have Jupiter hovering very close to this new moon. And so this could have you either acquiring a teacher that helps you out with regards to communications. Maybe you are taking up some kind of new communication style and you've got this great teacher that's really helping you bring and polish up those communication skills. But it can also have you communicating with foreign people in foreign places. That's the other thing that this can have happening too. Your siblings may be more important for you at this time. You could also have your neighborhood become more important. So all these areas could be up for you, but the big thing is that there's going to be some benefits in one or more of these areas that relate to a communication. And maybe this is kick-started off with some kind of very important communication that comes your way, Capricorn, that's important for you with regards to the areas that I just discussed for the third house. You know, we're also going to have that whole Venus conjunct Mars, conjunct Pluto, and it's in your sign, Capricorn. Now, the direct hit is only going to be for those that have something around the 27th. So if you've got your sun, say, or your ascendant around the 27-degree mark of Capricorn, whoa, this new moon is going to be outstanding for you. It can bring in so many good things for you. It can bring in money. It can bring in a great relationship. It can bring in fabulous friendships that are with people in power. It could have people in power giving you money to fund some new start for yourself. And for those that do have this around 27 degrees of Capricorn, I'd really like to hear over time what manifests for you, because that'll be kind of a once-in-a-lifetime thing. So the full moon in Virgo trines your sun, right? It's both of you are earth signs. It actually is in your 9th house. And so this 9th house also ties in with that foreign connection. Why? Because the 9th house is ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter's all about things that are of foreign nature. I saw this as a few things. For those Capricorns that are involved in any legal cases, this is a culmination, but because it forms a trine, this is going to be a very favorable outcome for you. It's great for travel or planning travel at this time. Certainly it will bring in anything with regards to the foreign connection is going to be positive for you, Capricorn. But it may end something. So for some folks, it might actually mark the end of some kind of big travel that you've been on, some foreign quest that you've been on now comes to a natural end. But I saw this as probably more so from the standpoint of a court case tying up, and it will tie up favorably for you, Capricorn. No doubt about that. You have the new moon in Aries in your 4th house. And this kind of forms a bit of a square with your sign. So this is you overcoming some kind of new problems in your home. Well, perhaps you purchased a home a few months ago, and now emerging out of your home are these issues that you didn't see to begin with. Not a big deal. you just need to realize that you're going to have to put your shoulder in here and put some effort into solving the problems. You're not necessarily going to have other people coming in to help you solve the problems. And in fact, you might even have some family interference come in at this time, because the fourth house also represents the family to some extent. And in particular, it does refer to your mother. Now, at its best, it could be that your mother does come to live with you, and that's the new start in the home, is that your mother has to come and live with you. Or some family member decides to come and stay with you at this time. Or it can bring in literally a new home for you. But it's going to bring in a new home for you, but you've got to resolve some problems in here as well. So what that says to me is, make sure whoever's inspecting your new home does a thorough job, and maybe you should ask some extra questions and look carefully at any contracts that you're signing with regards to obtaining a new home. For most Capricorns, you've already had or entertained Pluto in your sign. Pluto will be leaving next year, ostensibly leaving your sign. It will dip back in a little bit too, and it'll be going into Aquarius. So a big sigh of relief for all Capricorns. But for those Capricorns that still have something around the 27 to 29 degree of Capricorn, all this year you will still have Pluto bringing in his ongoing transformational effects of your whole life. And this is a once in a lifetime. So take advantage of it, of things that, for those folks that do have something around this degree point, it's not a bad thing to have your whole life transformed for the better, right? Take care, Capricorn. So that's my wrap up for March 2022. I hope everyone's enjoyed it. It is a new format that I'm using. I would be delighted to hear any comments or suggestions that you have. I hope everyone has benefited from being able to listen more specifically to their individual sign and or ascendant. I've had a lot of fun putting this together and plan to continue, but I'd love to hear from you, and your comments are always welcome. Have a wonderful March. We are springing into spring and then on to summer. Looking forward to it. Sending everybody lots of love. Bye for now.